Have you ever met someone who didn't feel new but felt familiar? Like your soul recognized them before your mind could explain why. There was no introduction inside your heart, no adjustment period, just a quiet feeling of, I know this person, even though I don't. You didn't plan it, you didn't chase it, you didn't even expect it. It just happened. And even when life tried to pull you apart, distance, timing, misunderstandings, ego, something kept pulling you back to the same person again and again. Not forcefully, not dramatically, just subtly, consistently. Psychology might call this coincidence. But deep connections follow patterns psychology can't ignore. Because when two people are truly meant to be, certain things always happen. Not perfectly, not magically, but inevitably. Not because love is easy, but because the bond refuses to disappear. And if you've ever felt this with someone, pause for a moment and ask yourself, why did this connection feel different from all the others? You meet at a time that changes you. People who are meant to be rarely meet when life is calm. They don't meet when everything is stable and predictable. They meet during transitions, moments when something inside you is already shifting. One of you is healing from something you never fully processed. One of you is becoming a version of yourself you don't fully understand yet. One of you is questioning everything you once believed about love, trust, or safety. That timing is not accidental. Psychology shows that the deepest bonds form when people meet during identity shifts. When you're no longer who you used to be, but not yet who you're becoming. During these moments, the brain is more open, the heart is more vulnerable, and the nervous system is searching for something familiar and safe. And that's when they appear. Not to complete you, but to confront you. They don't just enter your life, they interrupt it. They make you think differently about relationships you once normalized. They make you feel emotions you thought you had outgrown. They force you to question old emotional patterns you didn't even realize you were repeating. Have you ever noticed how being around certain people reveals parts of yourself you didn't know were still there? Through them, you start seeing yourself more clearly. Your fears, your habits, your defenses, your emotional walls, and even if the relationship doesn't last forever, the impact does. You grow because of them. You heal because of them. Or you finally realize what you deserve because of them. That realization alone can change the direction of your entire life. That's how you know the meeting mattered. People who aren't meant to be pass through quietly. They don't challenge your identity, they don't leave a mark. But people who are meant to be arrive during storms. And they leave you changed forever. No matter how far you drift, you find your way back. When two people are meant to be, distance doesn't erase the bond. It only tests it. You may stop talking. Life may pull you in different directions. Time may pass. Months, even years. You think you've moved on. You tell yourself you're done. You build a new routine, a new life, maybe even a new relationship. And on the surface, everything looks fine. But deep inside, something still feels unresolved. Then something small happens. A song you didn't expect to affect you. A memory that appears out of nowhere. A quiet moment where your mind drifts and lands on them. And suddenly, they're back in your thoughts, as if time never touched them. Psychology explains this through emotional imprinting. When someone leaves a mark on your nervous system, absence doesn't erase it. This isn't obsession, it's recognition. You're not longing for them every day, but when they cross your mind, it feels deeper than nostalgia. It feels unfinished, and eventually, paths cross again. Maybe through a message, a coincidence, a mutual friend, or a moment neither of you planned. Not because you were chasing, but because something unresolved was still pulling you toward each other. People who aren't meant to be fade with time. People who are meant to be returned. Not out of loneliness, but because the connection was never finished. Being with them feels like emotional rest. When two people are meant to be, love doesn't feel chaotic. It doesn't feel confusing. It doesn't feel like walking on emotional glass. It feels calm, not boring, not dull, just steady, like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. Even in silence, there's comfort. You don't feel pressure to fill every moment with words. You don't feel the need to perform. You don't feel the need to impress. You don't shrink yourself to be accepted. You don't protect yourself to feel safe. You can sit with them and feel more like yourself than anywhere else. Psychology calls this emotional attunement. When two nervous systems naturally regulate each other, safety replaces anxiety. Your thoughts slow down, your body relaxes, your guard lowers. This is how you know the connection is real, because intensity can come from trauma, but peace comes from compatibility. Even during conflict, you don't feel afraid of losing them. You feel understood. Even when you disagree, they don't drain you. They don't confuse you. They don't make you feel small. They feel like home. People who aren't meant to be leave you anxious. People who are meant to be leave you calmer than you were before. That kind of peace isn't learned. It's recognized. You trigger growth in each other, not fear. When two people are meant to be, they don't keep each other comfortable. They keep each other honest. Not in a harsh way, not through criticism, but in a way that gently exposes what needs healing. Being with them challenges you, not because they judge you, but because their presence makes your old patterns impossible to ignore. You start noticing things about yourself. How you communicate when you feel insecure. How you avoid when things get too real. How you love when you're afraid of being hurt. And instead of feeling attacked, you feel invited to grow. Psychology calls this secure mirroring. When someone reflects your behavior without shaming you for it, something shifts inside you. You don't feel smaller around them. You feel braver. They don't fear your growth. They don't compete with it. They celebrate it. And you do the same for them. Yes, it can feel uncomfortable at times. Growth always is. But it never feels unsafe. Fear-based relationships make you hide. Meant-to-be connections make you expand. You don't become perfect together. You become more aware, more grounded, more emotionally mature. And that kind of mutual growth doesn't happen by accident. And there's one more thing people rarely talk about. When two people are truly meant to be, their connection doesn't depend on constant presence. It survives absence. Even when they're not together, something inside them stays connected. Not in a painful way, not in a desperate way, but in a quiet, steady way that never fully shuts off. You may not talk every day. You may not even be part of each other's lives for a while. But deep down, there's a knowing that if life ever aligned again, the connection would still be there. And that's because real bonds don't live in conversation. They live in the nervous system. Psychology shows that when someone becomes emotionally familiar, your body remembers them even when your mind tries to move on. That's why some people are impossible to replace. Not because they were perfect, but because they felt safe in a way no one else did. Let me ask you something. Have you ever met someone after a long time and felt like no time had passed at all? That feeling doesn't come from attraction. It comes from emotional memory. Another sign you're meant to be is this. You don't need to prove your value to each other. There's no constant power struggle, no silent competition, no fear of being replaced. You don't measure who cares more. You don't keep score, because when the connection is real, both people feel chosen without being controlled. Psychology calls this emotional security. You're not together because you're afraid of being alone. You're together because being apart doesn't erase the bond. And that's rare. Most relationships survive only through effort. Meant-to-be connections survive through understanding. You also notice something strange. Even when things don't work out the first time, there's no hatred. There might be pain. There might be silence. There might be distance. But there's still respect. You don't wish them harm. You don't want to erase them from your memory. You don't rewrite the story to make them the villain. Because deep down, you know, they mattered. Psychology shows that when someone helped shape your emotional growth, your mind refuses to label them as meaningless. And that's why these connections never fully close. They evolve. Sometimes into love. Sometimes into lessons. Sometimes into timing that feels painfully wrong, before it finally feels right. And here's the truth most people don't want to hear. Being meant to be doesn't always mean ending up together immediately. Sometimes it means crossing paths to awaken each other. Sometimes it means separating to grow. Sometimes it means learning what love actually feels like. So you never settle for less again. But one thing is always true. You don't forget how safe you felt. You don't forget how deeply you were seen. You don't forget the version of yourself that only existed when they were around. Because meant to be loved doesn't shout. It doesn't chase. It doesn't beg. It stays. And if you're watching this right now thinking about one specific person, that's not a coincidence either. If you want to understand more about human behavior, emotional bonds, and the psychology people never talk about openly, subscribe to Psychology Unspoken.